So let me ask you this, Richard. Who do you think is the best as far as a large company, if you can say? I won't even say the best. Who do you...
No, it's a great question. So we actually talked about that a little bit on the way up. And so basically Allied is your forerunner right now. So it always changes. So what happens is, unfortunately, when you get to the top, you do top dog things. And then you forget about the number 2 and the number 3 are just biting at your heels. So they're going to, and Securitas is slipping. Unfortunately, they're the ones, they were up top for a little bit. Now they're starting to slip a little bit. I was talking to Joe about Blackstone seems to be coming on the scene. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they seem to be
Now,
coming
let me
on the
ask you,
scene.
did they start out of Arizona?
That's the one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. And so they just got the hospital
Wow,
account.
they're pretty quick.
Joe actually never heard of them, so he was looking. He literally said the same thing you said as he was looking. He says, damn, they got some growth pads. Never heard about it.
Yeah.
Hospital account.
We're talking 5 years. They were...
Off the grid.
That's pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we were saying. Obviously, they got into some niche, whether it's the health side, and then they impressed. But that's what happens. And that's how Sunstate grew, right? Because I knew them from day one. Is they came in as and Dennis was beautiful at it because he knew all the GMI, the Securitas, so he came in as, we're the alternate. We give you a better price, we give you better service, we don't do what they do. And then they become that guy too. Soon enough, Sunstate will be that guy too. So yeah, Allied was the same way. Yeah. So Allied and Securitas were running around. We can do it better, faster, cheaper. You don't want G4 because remember G4 is the top of the hill. You know, G4 had every government account. They had every city account.
Yeah, they were right in the beginning.
They were global. Exactly, they were global. You couldn't touch them.
Yeah.
If you like we talked about, if you wanted national, you went G4. And funny enough, my VP of security with the pharmaceutical, he hated G4. So he was like, I'll take 12 companies to piece the nation together and do G4. You know, and again, it's just observations and facts being in the industry.
I love your skill set. I love your background.
No, I appreciate it. And so that's why I look at it. It's, again, to me, when I coach and analyze with people, it's like any company. So I coach companies too. I have a company called Learn, Think, Share. But when you talk to the top dogs, you have to, what you do to get there is a whole lot different than what you do to stay there. And most companies, even in the corporate world, they don't follow the same pattern of success that got them there. You go back history, Toys R Us, right? Toys R Us was the king of toys, right? Anybody in this room bought thousands and thousands of dollars worth of toys, and all of a sudden they disappeared. Why? Because they didn't understand how to maintain that top dog status. All they had to do was switch to online. It would have really been that simple, right? We'd all be buying toys online from Toys R Us. But they missed the opportunity because they were too busy being top dog. And the same thing happens in the security world. What they do to make them successful is grind. They grind. They go out and get the accounts. Sort of like in Matt's position now. Allied is not doing what Matt does. Securitas is not doing what Matt does. And then before they know it, he's picking up all of these accounts and getting a reputation for integrity and doing the job right. And then people say, oh, we want to go to him with the big account. And that's the beauty of where he is now because he's poised to say, I've been grinding. I'm ready for the next account. I'm ready for the major account. I'm ready for the national account. And then that takes these other companies by surprise because they're like, who's Matt?
Is it, Richard?
It's human nature. It's human nature as people. And what I talk about is the same thing I talk about in martial arts, is mindset, right? Because this looks at who's successful, right? Again, you even look at a podcast, right? Anybody could do a podcast. Why is Joe Rogan so successful? It's his mindset. He has a mindset that he's going to go out there and he's going to cross lines that people don't cross. He's going to get guests that are controversial, right? But can anyone do that? Of course they can, right? I don't think we're confused about that. But it's a mindset. So the companies and the corporations have to change their mindset when they become the top. And again, you look at it, people our age, go to our age. Someone's 60 who's running a company, right? CEOs, corporate executives, 60 years old. We went to school back in 1980. And we went to college in 84. We served in the military. I got out in 89. And so if we're still trying to apply those same tactics that we learned, a lot of them apply, a lot of tactics do, but we have to adapt. It's a new world. So if you don't adapt and you don't change, and then if you look at some companies and you go to these security conventions, real estate conventions, and you the management team, and you see this when you do bids, right? Who walks in the room? 5 guys 62 years old and above. And they're going to be dealing with a Matt. They're going to be dealing with 20-year-old officers. They're going to be dealing with a 25-year-old client, which is fine if you have the right mindset. And I always use the example of how do I talk to people of all ages. I had a good friend, 4-year-old son. She pops out of the car. We're visiting another friend. The son gets out. I'm 60 years old at the time. He's got Spider-Man sneakers, Spider-Man pants, and a Spider-Man shirt and a Spider-Man hat. 4 years old. Guess what we talk about? Batman.
Very good.
I tell him Batman's a much better superhero.
Absolutely.
Now this kid's engaged. His eyes are lit up. He's fired up. The kid doesn't talk. 4 years old, they're not really talking to grown men, right?
Yeah.
So 4 years old, he's fired up, man. He's telling me all about Spider-Man. I'm giving him all my Batman. And so that's what you do when you continue to get up the ladder. You know, me, I walk around security sites. I talk to the 20-year-olds, what makes you tick, where you at. Matt and I hit it off from day one. We sat down across from each other. But again, he brings integrity, he brings self-confidence, he brings all of the good things. But we hit it off from day one because we communicated. We sat down and we talked, and I got to know him. So people get detached. They go to work, they do their hours, they get in the car, they go home, they go back to the subdivision, they go back to the country club, which is great. But that's not going to keep you in touch with the business market. Why are 20-year-olds so successful in podcast and AI and all of these technological things? Because they got their hand on the pulse. They know exactly what their audience wants because they listen to their audience, they listen to emails, they listen to texts, they listen to people saying, hey, it would be cool if you do this. So business doesn't often do that. They're not looping back in. And again, we've all experienced now, everybody says customer service has gone down the hill. That could be objective, subjective, but again, you can talk to 100 people and they've all had pretty dismal experiences with customer service in every company. Airlines, hotels, rental cars, refunds, because people are not focusing on the customer anymore. Back in the day, Sears was great. They'd return anything. Remember those days? Sears was the only company before your time.
Yeah, they would.
Nobody else would return anything. It didn't matter if the thing broke on the way home or in the car. You had a receipt. They're like, no, thank you. You walked out the door. You own it. Sears took that customer service to the next level and says, you bring it back, we'll honor it. They had the tools. They had the lawn furniture. We honor it. So that's how they listen to their customers. But people are getting away from that. The customers are almost a side thought. And that's why if you're successful, you listen to your customers. And people, again, like Matt, come in and they can definitely have a touch with their customers. That's what's given them the superpower now. Because, again, the bigger companies, they either don't have time or it's not important. So this is what we can do for you. We're so big, we're so powerful. It's like in any field. It's like a lawyer. If we call up a lawyer now and we call up Joe John Smith, Harry Jones Incorporated, how much time do you think they're going to give us on the phone? We're probably not even going to get 5 minutes from the receptionist who's already a high-level receptionist in our mind.
Yep.
And then we call up Joe's law firm. Hey, this is Joe. Hey, Joe, I just got one quick question for you. I got a legal issue. Okay, what you got? So that's unfortunately what happens. And, of course, you can't be wasting time accommodating everybody in the chain, but you still have to have some people that's their job, people that communicate and listen to people. And that's why, again, the companies are not in tune. Because I work with a lot, getting back to the security world, are not in tune to the clients. They just come in, they talk, they show a PowerPoint, and they leave. They don't know what the client's needs are, what's important to them. Is it important to have the guards looking sharp? Is it important to make sure people don't piggyback? And I just talked to this example today. Some companies, I always ask that, some companies in the piggybacking thing, it's not a big deal. It's, people, the door's open, people walk in. Other companies, it's like it's a firing offense. So you need to know that. Are people going to get fired if they walk through with single badge in? And then you have to enforce it. Company Blue Cross Blue Shield in Durham, the headquarters, if you showed up without your badge, you went home. No questions asked. You don't get in the building. Another company I worked for, you showed up, your manager had to come down and retrieve you. So that was a pretty clear deterrent. So that makes change. And that keeps you in tune with your customers. What are their needs?
Listen, first of all, thank you guys for coming in. Richard, this could be my first time meeting you, and I'm real upset about that because I've heard nothing but great things about you from Matt and Joel. They were all excited. Oh, you got to meet this guy, Richard. I go, you guys are sitting there talking 5 minutes about Richard, and why am I just being introduced to Richard? So, Matt, what's the deal here? What's the deal?
Hey, there's really no.
I thought you liked me. I thought
there's really no good answer. It's all about timing. And so I've known Richard for a few years now. We met. He was the security director for a hotel. We were the service provider, and we hit it off ever since. And I look up to Richard. Just the experience and the knowledge and his perspective on a lot of things is there's a lot to learn from. And so I'm actually really excited to introduce him to you. I know you guys are going to hit it off. You guys are cut from the same cloth. And yeah, so I'll let Richard take it over.
Okay. I am super pleased to have you here, Richard. Thank you very much for just what little conversation we have been having. It's like I'm getting like flashbacks a little bit. Obviously, you're very skilled. No question about that. So please introduce yourself briefly, and then we're going to get into it because I'm super excited about this. And I think everybody watching this, you guys hang on because Richard's got a lot of information. I've been here talking with Richard for about 20 minutes before the cameras went live here. And wow, let's go.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And Matt said everything is a matter of timing. So I always look at things happen when they're supposed to happen. But yeah, I've heard a lot about you, and I knew that it would definitely be in alignment. So same concept. When I first met Matt, it was just a matter of putting people in the right circle. Again, I don't have anything against anyone, but there are certain people that you pull into your inner circle. And funny enough, my wife is a very good judge of character. And when she first met Matt, she says, I like him. So once they pass my wife's muster, then I know that life is good to go. And then she'll always ask about him. And so the same thing with even the brief encounter they first met, they've known each other a bit, but she's right away, she said, he's a good guy. So that's what I look at when I associate with people, whether it's friendships, relationships, or business, is that core integrity. And I think that will get you far in life.
Yeah. I think women have that gift, huh?
They do. Well, us men get ego involved. We get our ego involved. We get a lot of things involved. And that's one of the things I work on, too, in the martial arts and teach people is try to put that ego aside. Because once you do it, you can see so clearly, especially in the martial arts. I trained in the Korean arts, and there's always a lot of bravado. And I've come from Brooklyn, so I could bring as much bravado as anybody, but I realized that wasn't really getting me anywhere. So I decided that I'd had to, it's like the business strategy. You have to counteract, right, someone's energy. So if they're putting a lot of bravado, I'd have to be able to disarm them. And the same thing in the security world where people are really aggressive and want to fight. And I'd look at them calmly and I say to them, first of all, you're drunk, you're emotional, you might have some skill. I'm not drunk, I'm not emotional, and I have a lot of skill. How do you think this is going to pan out? And 99.9% of the time, it hits something in their head to think, yeah, that's not really, odds are not in my favor. And so I've learned to do that with people. And so again, it's the concept of be you for you. People will act a certain way. Not everybody's going to be calm and collective like us. We have a lot of schooling, training, discipline. So why would I expect everybody out there in the world to have the same discipline that I have in a parking lot? They get aggravated over a parking spot. And the thing is, I love to fight. I fought my whole life. I'm fighting in the arts. I did the mixed martial arts back in the days, but I've learned that's not the answer either. So I fight still, spar, get my jollies that way. But in dealing with people, you just have to understand how to be calm and be kind. And that to me has been the formula for success, is once you're kind, whether people like you or not, they're going to still be a little bit polite. And then you go from there.
Can you do me a favor? Because everybody I bring into the podcast, everybody's always interested. Where did Richard come from? Was he born? What was his family like? Can you give us a brief summary of your family, where you were raised? And
Sure. It's very vital of where I got. So I was born in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Everybody speaks D's, does, them. Very simple, like all your movies. My cousin Vinny, that's my family. And uniquely enough, my dad was Mexican and my mom is Irish. So I grew up Mexican-Irish in a predominantly 98% Italian and Jewish neighborhood. So I've learned then the be you for you is really vital because I didn't fit into a box. So I had to realize that I can't put people in a box because I don't have a box. So that kind of gave me a good advantage. And my mom and dad were very cool. They were open-minded to everybody. And this is the 60s I was born. So that not everybody was open, but our house was open to everybody. There was no discrimination. Didn't matter who you were, whether you were educated. My dad was a janitor. So he's a Mexican janitor. So he didn't rate high on the social class scale, but he was a kind man and everybody loved him. Unfortunately, he passed when I was 8 in a car crash. So then I got raised by my mom. I had an older brother and an older sister, and unfortunately, it's part of my history. They went off the rail. So they all turned to alcohol and drugs. I was 8 years old. I turned to sports. I turned to martial arts. I turned internal. I turned to God. I asked God a lot of questions, and God didn't give me too many answers. And so it put me on a search for knowledge, for answers. And so I look at that as a benefit, as a curse, and one and the same. It's like a double-edged sword, and that kind of helped shape my life. So dabbled with the alcohol and the party scene in New York, and then I said, that's not for me. So I completely gave that up, haven't been drinking ever since then. Joined the Marine Corps, did martial arts, life of discipline, life of helping people, life of doing security to provide safety to people. And that's a lesson that I learned from my dad. And I'll tell you this quick story about my dad, which will sum up my core. I was 7 years old, so everything I know is traced to that because my dad died when I was 8. So we were going in Central Park in Brooklyn, which is it was actually Prospect Park, which is a pretty dangerous area. So we're driving after we did our little fun Sunday play in the park, me, my brother, my dad, and we're driving, and all the cars are making U-turns, like just frantically making U-turns on this Sunday. And I'm like, what's going on? And my dad's still driving. And as we get closer, we can see a mob, like literally a mob, and we can hear screaming, like screeching from women. Like a high-pitched women. It almost seemed like a barbaric, sounds to me. So I'm 7. I don't know these sounds. We don't have internet or anything. So these sounds are very weird. And so we keep driving, and then we get where I can now see the crowd, and I see all of this kind of violence in the air, and my dad gets out of the car, and he looks at me and my brother, and he says, lock the doors and only open them for the police. And he walks away. So now here I am, 7 years old, trying to process this, which I have no recollection of how to process this. And I watch my dad, he's a 5'5" Mexican guy, walking towards this mob. He disappears in the mob. Again, my brain is flooded with all kinds of images. And then, I don't know the time, it would seem like forever, he comes walking out. He's got one girl by the hand and 5 girls behind him. And they walk to the car, and I can see them coming. Their clothes are ripped off. They got blood all over themselves, and they're trying to hold their clothes on them, which is shreds. One gets in the front, 4 get in the back. He gets a blanket from the back, puts it on them, and he says to them, I will drive you to the police station, call your parents. So we drive 2 blocks. So this mob is happening 2 blocks from the police station. We go to the police station. He looks at them. He says, call your parents. He said, but I advise you never to come back here ever again for your safety. He brings them in, comes back, and I said, why did you keep going forward? Everybody was turning around. He said, somebody had to do it. And I said, what did you say to them? He said, never mind. I said, what did you do? He said, never mind. I said, how did you get in and out of it? He says, never mind. And then he turns and he looks at me. He says, one thing I will tell you. And he says, real serious. And I said, what? He said, don't tell your mother. And I'm like, okay, our secret. Unfortunately, I never got to ask him. So again, if you believe in the afterlife or heaven, that's the question I will ask him when I see him, because I want to know, what did this man say? But to me, that put it in the higher level of how your mindset, because it's mindset. It's not physical. He's not overtaking this crowd.
Yeah.
So whatever he did, he went in there and conveyed to this group that he's leaving with these women, and they're actually girls. It worked. So somehow, some way, he conveyed, because it wasn't a physical message. And if they wanted to, they could have pounded him just the same and kept on their business. So that put me in like a whole higher level of thinking, and also the service of someone has to do it. And I think collectively we all feel that way as well, that we're the somebody that has to do something. I wouldn't turn away. I wouldn't walk away. If someone needs help, I will do whatever. And then, of course, I told some people that story, like, oh, he risked your safety. He risked his own safety. And I'm like, yes, he did. But as he said, someone had to do it.
It's really interesting when you mention that, because in the beginning of my law enforcement career, because I was raised by a father who was really abusive and physical, so I did a lot of throat swallowing,
Yeah. Internalizing.
going to different directions when he's yelling, screaming, and he would do it in front of people, right, to where it would be totally disrespectful. But I had to swallow that. So for years and years, and then when the ability, what they call verbal judo, tactical communication came out, I thought, how interesting. And I started to practice with that. But what I really realized was my skill set of having somebody that was so abusive that I knew how those other people felt. So when they were there, I could get to that point. And I was very successful with that. So you brought up the story with your dad. It kind of give you a, wow, I got to learn more about this. You don't have to be physical. You could really accomplish so much. I solved, in fact, 4 to 5 complex murders when I was working custody gangs. And it was no street experience yet. They couldn't understand, how in the hell can you? And I had guys in the office that I would sit down. I'd watch a guy in the cell, because I was that kind of like what they call a prowler at the time. So I'd go and through the custody facilities. I had jailhouse cards of everybody that was in custody. I was always looking at people that came in the fish line and identify them. And then I had a room that was all tricked out. So long story short, I'd see them sitting on the bunk, deep thought, cigarette, and I'm thinking, I wonder what he's thinking about. You want to use the phone? I let him use the phone. Then you know who he's calling. Yeah. And I'd use that. Sometimes, never in a bad way, but it was just being able to understand them emotionally. So when you said that up at your dad, did that kind of give you the direction, hey, there's more?
No, absolutely. And what I look at is we all have that ability, right? You believe in God or higher power. We all have that ability. But again, it's dumbed down in school, right? You're not taught to have initiative. You're not taught to think. And people say you're judgmental. I'm not being judgmental. I'm assessing someone in the first minute based on their body posture, their language, their actions. And I'll treat them fairly, but I can assess them. And we're giving that skill. I always use the example of a little rabbit, right? Everybody thinks we need to have skills and NLP and this and that. Those are nice. I know people that do that. But a rabbit has a million predators, right? Anybody can eat a rabbit. Did they go to school? Do they have rabbit school that says, hey, let's get together. Let's figure out how do we avoid the eagles? How do we avoid the hyenas? How do we avoid the coyotes? How do we avoid dogs, chickens, goats? No. they're born with this, right? Whether it's a creator or God, or however you size up, they're born with this instinct to survive. And the rabbits have done pretty good at surviving, right? Because who is the rabbit fighting off? They have no fight-off ability. They're prey to anybody who wants a nice little rabbit stew. So I look at that as people, like if rabbits are instilled with this great survival skill, how to go under a hole when an eagle's coming or to hide here or there and survive and then to multiply, I think our Creator kind of give us the same kind of instincts and skills, but we have to use them. And then the same thing, you look at why do people not use it? It comes into ego. It comes into the way we're taught. Don't do that. Don't make assessments. Don't jump to conclusions. We've heard all of this. I mean, I'm jumping to conclusions every second of my life because I'm factoring in 5 things. That leads me to a conclusion. I'm not jumping. I'm going step by step. But people are taught not to do that. Like it's actually discouraged. And it's taking away from our instincts. And same thing, survival instincts. Again, we've been removed from that, but our ancestors survived. How did they survive building log cabins? There was no log cabin school. They didn't go to school and say, okay, we're all going to get together and have a log cabin building class. They were out there building log cabins. And then, of course, you share the knowledge. He shares the knowledge. We share the knowledge with our sons. But who started it? Who built the first log cabin?
Yeah.
I couldn't even build a log cabin now if I had a kit. I don't know how I would go out in the woods and get wood. And what tools do we have, right? We didn't go to Lowe's and get the tool kit to cut down trees and shave it. And they were doing it. But we've gotten away from that, unfortunately.
All the way up through business.
Absolutely. It follows us everywhere. And again, like I said, the people who have been trained, they've been trained in this school from 1960, 1970, 1980s. And again, I'm appreciative of college. I've been to college. My kids have been to college. My wife's been to college. But they're far removed from the reality world. Who's teaching college? They're college teachers. The good professors have been there 30 years. Again, goes back to the same principle. They went back to school and college in 1980. And now they're 30 years in a college institute, which is a completely different world. I work with college professors and deans and stuff. They see the world differently. It's not their fault or it's not bad or good, but they just have a different view. It's just like someone in law enforcement 30 years, not good or bad. They see the world differently.
Yeah.
You know, you talk to someone, especially if they're dealing with homicide or stuff like that, they have a whole different perspective on the world, rightfully. But again, the key is to be open-minded, is to appreciate other people. Again, you're in a homicide profession. You've seen lots and lots of murders. You've seen the worst side of humankind, but you have to be able to see the good in people too.
Yeah, you got to be able to flip the channel. I learned that, and despite even, I don't want to sound like I'm broken. Well, everybody's broken, but I guess where I was going, despite my father's issue, he was also a police officer. He was even smart enough to realize that. You got to be able to turn the channels. If you think you're John Wayne, you're going to go out there, you're going to change the world. It's not going to happen. Right. They do what they do. You do what you do. You get with a partner or a bad partner, and you're unethical, you're a crook, you're going to go to jail, you're going to go to prison. Plain and simple. Yeah. And then if you ruin our name, that's a whole different story. I'll kill you. But here's the rules, right? And despite who he was and how he acted, he was, I have to admit, had a lot of integrity. He was credible. And he just didn't put up with anything that was bullshit. That was his own defect.
And that's good you're able to see that. Some people never get to that. You know,
Yeah.
some people never get to the flip side. And everybody has some good in them. You know what I mean? It's, again, of course, there's some despicable mass murderers. And again, their soul is completely corrupt if you look at it. But the average person still has some good in them. And it comes down to integrity. And as Joe was talking, my business partner, he's an Indian gentleman, and I met him 9 years ago. One of my martial arts counterparts from North Carolina that I was associated with came out here to California, and he introduced me to my business partner, which is Adi Sasanji. And he introduced me to him. We met. We hit it off, a man of integrity. And then we were friends, casual friends for a while. And then we met up again a few years later, and we decided to do some of his charity events together for an organization called Satology, which is the study of truth. So he created the word, which is Sat, which is Sanskrit for truth, and ology, the study of. So he took that word and said it's the opposite of mythology. So it's very interesting, which I've learned because I've been to lots of schools and lots of advanced education, but he speaks about how our history, the ones we're taught, especially in the West, is jaded. And we know that, but to the extent that he tells me, it's wow. It's like going to school is like reading comic books because that's how far off the truth we are. So when I first met him, we hit it off, and then we bonded, and then we started to do business together. And then he had told someone this in front of me, which is always the coolest thing. One of his counterparts introduced me. He said, the reason I do business with Richard, he says, my friend, Master Singh, told me that Richard has integrity and that he would go to the end of the earth for him. He said, so that right there sold me on him. And so that choked me up because, again, we're macho guys. We don't like to hear that mushy stuff, but because it definitely hits the heart. When stuff gets in, it gets in. And so that's how he felt about me, and I felt the same about him, coming back to the integrity thing. And I'm not big on doing a lot of business associates. My martial arts schools were pretty much independent. Came up in the Korean lineage, but I did my own business. And the Korean masters had issues, but they respected that because I don't want people to be in my business that don't jive with me. So we jived. And so he, at that point, coming back to the combination of doing both sides, he's a high-level corporate guy. He's in the enterprise software field. So he sold software to the CIA, the banking industry, the hotel industry. He's got patents on the drone. So the drone chip, when your drone talks to the cloud, that's his chip and his patent. So he sold that company, and now he gets paid every time they use it. He also created the format for ChatGPT, and then he created it and sold it to ChatGPT. So the key of what Joe was saying is when we hooked up together, he had this, he sold 16 companies. Right before we went into business, he sold 16 companies. And so he had a CEO mindset. That's all he was from a young man, CEO. So he didn't see the flip side of how to talk to people, how to communicate with people, how networking works, how getting out in the public works. And his intelligence is in the top 0.5%. So he's not even 1%, he's 0.5%. And so I always kid him, I say, you talk and you think that the other 99.5% of the world understands you. I said, there's only like this amount of people that understand you. So I call myself his translator. And so he's a world-renowned expert in Sanskrit. So he consults with all of the top leaders in the world that come to him for Sanskrit expert. And then, of course, he unveils stuff. He's a very humble man. So one time another friend was saying something about, oh, James Cameron. And he's, yes. And so the guy goes, you spent time with him? He's, yes. I'm like, how do you know James Cameron? He says he made this movie, and he calls me up, and he wants some information on the Sanskrit word. So now, of course, you're thinking the same thing. What movie would that be? And he says, Avatar. He said, Avatar is a Sanskrit word. And so he called me to consult to make sure that he was using the name correctly. I'm like, that's pretty cool. So with him, he realized, he just recently over the past 4 years wrote 16 books, high-level historic books of real intense historical knowledge, military knowledge. His latest book is The Interstellar War, and he takes it back to an ancient war a couple of thousand years ago, and he displays that the weaponry that they used was superior to ours because they wiped out like hundreds of thousands of people in this battle, and there's no weapons that can do that at this time other than like a nuclear. So he said that their technology, which we all can agree on, that the technology we had has somehow disappeared. And so he's researched all of this based on the numbers, based on all of the documentation, that there had to have been some more superior warfare. And somehow it just fell off. And there's a lot of explanations for that as well. So he looks at it, which again, is the great conversation, is that there's some sort of other atmosphere or galaxy that plays into things. So that's always a good thing, because is it all us, or is there some other thinking out there? Where do we get our thoughts? Where do we get our concepts? Where do things come from? Where do they go? We used to make pyramids. We can't make it anymore. So did it come to us and then it went away? Or did it come from somewhere else? And so it's always great conversations. So that's what he does with his stuff. But so his segue into it is the same thing we talk about, is that CEOs and people of that level have to reinvent themselves and open their mind. And so by partnering with me, he's able to open up his mind to a whole new world. Because as you see, I'm off the page when it comes to a lot of stuff. So people appreciate that, because I never thought of it that way. No one's ever said it that way. And you're right, there are other ways to do things. So it's been a good combination for me as well to understand how high-level intellectual people think. And it's always funny because things are a blessing and a curse, because I'm not really super intelligent. I have a certain level of intelligence, and I'm always honest about this. I find a lot of people stupid. It's like I have patience, but It's like I couldn't even imagine if I was super intelligent, if I was really in that high level of intelligence, how you function on a day-to-day basis.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. So I always find that interesting. Is, wow, that's got to be such a weird place to be at that level of intelligence and looking at the world. It's like they don't understand ABCs.
Yeah. How does that happen? You're right. It's just amazing.
And it's a development skill, because that's what I learned from him. So of course, he has talent like everybody else, and he has maybe higher intelligence, but there's a lot of higher intelligent people that don't develop it. We always hear wasted talent or wasted potential. And I think that's common and unfortunate that people, because they're getting negative input, their parents, their grandparents, their neighborhood, their schools. No, you can't be an actor. No, you can't be an athlete. No, you can't be a law enforcement. Don't go in the military. It's unsafe. I talked to many people that have been influenced to not go in the military. And to me, I'm an advocate. Yes, it's dangerous. I give them that. But there's a lot of other things to it as well. You serve your country. You serve your community. You serve your people. You represent people are needed. So I give the positive. So I always warn people when they say, can you talk to my son or my daughter about the military? I say, I'm going to give them a whole lot of pros.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great stepping stone for people to do. So, yeah, it's a matter of just giving people, again, seeing them and not discouraging them. Someone tells me they want to go and do artwork in the streets of Paris. I explore that. Okay, what's your plan? You're going to sell it? You're going to give it away? You're going to work at a hotel and then sell it on the weekends? What's your plan? And they get really baffled because no one does that. If someone comes to their parents and say, I want to quit school and go sell artwork in the streets of Paris, 99% of the parents be like, no, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But me, I'm like, let's explore that. What kind of art? Like, how are you going to do it? You're going to work part-time, and then until you bring it up, you're going to sell by the piece. You're going to have, and they're like, whoa, this could be real.
Yeah.
It's like watering the seeds, but people don't do that anymore. It's just like my older daughter, she wanted to major in English. First of all, she didn't want to go to college. So my mother, who didn't go to college, and my sister didn't go to college, are blowing up my phone. How could she not go to college? I'm like, time out. I've been to college. My wife's been to college. We're all college people. You're not, but we get it. Because they just think it's the way to get ahead. And so, so she took a year off. She goes to college. She majors in English. So everybody's freaking out about that. And I already know her. So she's an artist, and she's in the martial arts. So she gets out of college. She gets a master's in English contemporary, whatever it was. She opens up a yoga studio, and she sells artwork. So that's our path. I didn't discourage her. Because people are like, oh, you can't pay for college if your daughter's going to do English. She needs a viable skill. I'm like, English is viable.
Sure.
Studying the classics is good. Studying contemporary English is good. And then she wants to suited to be an entrepreneur. And then you'll find this funny, as kids do, comes back to a little bit of ego. So she opens up a yoga studio in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And then we're talking amongst friends, and they're like, oh, that's similar to your dad's martial arts school. She's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. And they're like, but it's the same model. And they're like, and I'm like, it's her thing. And then like she'll walk away and they'll be like, but it's literally the same thing. She's selling memberships to do yoga in the same room that you're selling like Taekwondo. And I said, just give her a thing. Give her a thing.
Yeah.
But so I encouraged her to do what she wanted to do. Yes, you want to encourage your kids to be happy, successful, but that doesn't always equate to money. It doesn't always equate to a corporate job. And yes, you want to guide them the best way, but you have to take into consideration their views and what they want in life and not squash it.
That's beautifully said. An example, my daughter goes to Oregon. Mom wants me to be a doctor. I said, what do you want to do? I think I want to be a doctor, right? I go, okay. So she's there for a year. Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a child psychologist. Why? What brought that up? Well, I like little babies and I like children. Is that your idea? Mom thought it would be best because I was babysitting, and I'm like, trying to keep neutral. Okay. So now she's in Utah, right? Gets to Utah. She's there 3 months. Dad, I've always been able to talk to you. I think Mom says I'm like you. I want to be an entrepreneur, but I just want to cut hair and do makeup. I go, honey, what do you want to do? I want to cut hair and do makeup.
Awesome.
How bad do you want to cut hair and do makeup? Really bad, Dad. That's all I wanted to do. This is what you wanted to do for a very long time, right? Yes, I love it, Dad. I said, well, I know you do, because when you and I are together, you're in the mirror for 4 hours, so you're good at it. And I said, all I want you to do, just be happy. And I said, babe, if you and I would have had this conversation 3 years ago, right? If you and I would have had this conversation 3 years ago, could have saved all this time. But you are going to get your A before you leave.
Yep.
Okay, at minimum. Okay. And she did. But
Okay.
now she's cutting hair, and she's
Awesome.
happy in her little studio over there and going through all the business stuff. But it's a great point.
Yeah,
It
that's
really
good
is.
you fed that, because that's the thing, because you could have squashed it. You could have pointed it in the wrong direction, and then that's what a lot of people do. There's a lot of pressure. There's family pressure, cultural pressure.
Yeah.
Just like now, I have a 19-year-old daughter at home. She graduated high school last year, and brilliant kid. She was homeschooled. She went from K to 12, homeschooled the whole time. My wife's brilliant. I always tell them I'm the administrator of the school. They don't
Sure.
even want me to have that. So I give my wife the brilliant credit. I'm the administrator. But anyway, so luckily my wife is brilliant, so my daughter's brilliant. They do computers. My son programs games. My wife does the gaming podcast that reviews games. So they're all in the gaming space. So my daughter's grown through school, because it usually took her like 2 hours to do a full school day at home without all of the fluff.
Sure.
And then she would read, she'd work on computers. And so it came to coming to college, and everybody's like, you got to go to college. What college? What college? She doesn't want to do college. I don't see any benefit for her taking Math 101 and English 101 until she decides what she wants to do. And she basically wants to be an entrepreneur. So that's all we've done around the home is show her that, teach her that. And so she's still not, and that's what happens too when you're really intelligent. It's really hard to find your niche. Because I had one friend she was intelligent enough to be a doctor and a lawyer, so she couldn't decide, so she became a legal doctor's lawyer kind of thing. So medical lawyer. So that's why we didn't pressure my daughter. And then basically now she's helping us in the business. So we run the other business, like I said, and she's helping us with that. She knows stuff. I was telling Matt this. I wanted to make my logo clear. So I'm wrestling with it. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and I said, Alexis, I'm trying to make my logo clear. She said, why don't you just make it clear? I said, that's the question that I'm pondering here. She said, why don't you go to the app that does that? And I'm like, that would be great if I knew what that app was. So, of course, she takes my phone. She pulls it up. The app shows up. She says, where's your logo? I send it to her. She says, oh, right here. You hit remove background. Of course, I get the sound effects. I get the phone back.
So bothered that he didn't know.
Yeah, just this is simple, Dad. Come on, get with the program.
That's classic.
Yeah, but that's the key is you just let them be themselves and they'll find their own lane. Because especially with life, because people are like, oh, I said, let's just say she goes to college in 2 years if that's what she decides to supplement her entrepreneurship. If you're going to work to 60, you still got time to play the game on both ends of this fence. And I had a martial arts student. He moved out to Silicon Valley, making big money, married a woman making big money. So he got out there after college at 21, worked 4 years, 25. The both of them resigned. And they spent 2 years traveling all over East Asia. 2 years. Taking pictures on the waterfalls, the monuments, doing the Great Wall. 25 years old. But they pooled their money. They had enough to do this whole couple of years. And then guess what? They came back. Their skills were still viable. They beamed right back into Silicon Valley, and everybody else was still sitting at their cubicles. And they had this life experience, which, again, we didn't have that option.
No.
We were high school, college, law enforcement, or military. That was our options back in the day. That's what we had. There was no other choice. Unless you were, like, smart enough to be a doctor. If you weren't going to be a doctor, then, okay, which branch do you want to go in? You don't want to go in the military, what law enforcement you want to go into, or prison guard. In New York City, they had the prisons up there in Broadway, had a bunch of family in the prison. So, yeah, that was our options back then.
I never thought, ever, that I was going to be doing what I'm doing today. The cop thing was it.
Yeah.
That was it. From little all the way up, that's what I'm going to do. That's it. There's nothing's going to change my mind until, like you said. And my father was killed in a plane crash when he turned 50. And that's when things changed for me because he had that power over me still.
No doubt.
Because he would have sat down and said, what are you, sick, stupid, crazy? What are you going to do? Be a security guard or open a business? And it's just weird how things opened up. And I think that tragic or that event, and then my mom passing from cancer a couple of years later after that, I remember sitting at Bob's Big Boy, Willowbrook somewhere. And I was thinking to myself, man, things have changed. The fun part is out.
Yeah.
I've seen it, I've done this. What am I doing, right? And then somebody offered me a job to help with the 105 freeway housing project when they were building that.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit of gang experience, so I was helping him do that. And he had his guard company. He said, well, why don't you come in and try it? So, again, I played the game. I went out and sold it. I made up. I was actually dealing with, back in the day, it was APS. And then it was whacking it. This is 80s?
Oh, yeah.
No, 90s. So security was really just coming to the market then. It was out, but it wasn't.
There was
like
only a couple of companies.
Oh, only a couple of companies. Yeah, and now look, 30 years later, gosh, man.
Oh, I know. It's a mindset shift. And that's what I analyze. I analyze people and I look at what the transition is. How does it happen? Sometimes it's tragic. Sometimes it's just you just sit down and you're like, I need a change. And that's what I help people with. I'm like, it doesn't have to be, you have to be miserable at work for 10 years. You can make a change. Just think about it. What do you want to do? And I have a cousin that's run his law firm. He's been in law since did the high school, law school. So close to my age, so he's been running his own firm for 20 years, and he's been miserable. So I moved out here 13 years ago, so we spent a lot of time here. He's been miserable every 13 years that I see him. Like, it's just everything about it. He's been there, done that, burnt out, clients this, that, this, the other thing. He's talking about retirement. I said, well, what are you going to do? He's, I can sell. And I'm like, I understand that. What are you going to do? He's, I'll just be retired. I'm like, dude, you're working 16 hours your whole life. He comes from upstate New York. So they were like, old school, you grind till you die.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't go to the beach. You're not going to sell your company on Friday and hang out on the beach on Monday.
Thank you.
One, you're not a beach hanger. And two, you don't have anybody that you hang with. So it's not like you're going to have a golf club or you're going to go with your buddies and start fishing. You don't have that. That's not in place. You have to change your mindset. And he's starting to think, and that's why he talks to me. So I was telling you, like, he'll talk to me on occasion because he doesn't like the dose of truth all the time. Because he can be in his own little world. Nobody at his company's talking to him about exit strategies. You don't learn that stuff. Nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
You just come to work, you grind. They come to him with the file. They come to him with pay issues. He handles it, moves on. So I kept telling him, you have to change your mindset. I said, I could help you, but it comes from you. I can't change your mindset. We went to a concert to see Heart a couple weeks ago, and there's this guy next to us. It's a young Marine, and he's jumping around. And my cousin looks at him. He said, look at that guy. I said, he's having a good time. And then I look at him, I said, you would never do that in your life. I said, you think that's the craziest thing going, that this guy has to be off his rocker. I said, he's having a good time. And so he's, Then we went to another concert like 2 weeks later. And I said, you know what? I said, I can see that you're changing. I said, I'm going to see you at the next concert. You're going to get up and start dancing. And he's like, I don't think so. And I said, but you got to change your mindset. I said, because you're just stuck. You did the grind. You grew up in an impoverished neighborhood in upstate New York. Yeah. You grind until you retire and you die. So he has no exit strategy, but he's just been miserable. And everything that even the concert, he's grumbling. I always laugh because we had seen Van Halen up in the Hollywood Bowl, which was great for me. And I go for the experience. I'm not expecting David Lee Roth to do great vocals. He never had great vocals. But of course, my cousin, being the grumbly guy, the vocals were off. He couldn't hit the notes. I'm like, the dude's 73 years old. He couldn't sing when he was 20. What were you expecting? Like, what was your expectation? But that's what happens. He's got to grumble for everything. It's too hot. It's too cold. And that's his mindset. He'll even laugh because he knows that. He says, you've done more in 13 years. He said, I've lived here for 30 years. He says, you've done more in 13 years than I've done in 30 years. He says, you're living the California life. I said, of course. Why wouldn't I? Like, why would I not take advantage of the beaches and Hollywood and concerts and Hollywood fame and all that? So, yeah, it's a mindset is what I see it as. And I try to help people before something becomes tragic. Sometimes people get sick and then they think, oh, I need to turn my life around, or their spouse gets sick. You can do it at any time. It's just really, it's easy as flipping the switch, but it's very complicated to flip that switch.
Sure.
But once you do, because people talk about age, at any age. You could be 70. My uncle was 72 years old, full-blown alcoholic, big Irish guy, 6'2", always had a drink in his hand, smoked cigars too. He shows up one time at a party, and we're like, oh, Uncle Tom, you want your usual drink? He's, no. What do you mean? He said, I don't drink anymore. What does that mean? He's like, just woke up this morning, no more drinking. So we're like, just a thing. Didn't drink anymore. Lived till 80-something, never touched a drink again. And it wasn't like he wasn't around it because everybody in the family was drinking. So whatever reason, something flipped in his head that he said, I'm not going to drink. And then the flip switch, too, you talk about the cancer thing. My mom, we're visiting my brother, who was 50, dies of lung cancer because he was old school. He started smoking when he was like 8. He literally had a cigarette in his hand.
All the time.
Every place he went, cigarette. So he's in the hospital at 50. I go with my mom to visit, and I never got in her business. I always told people, be you for you. You smoke, you drink, you do drugs. That's your business. But I said, Mom, I said, I don't ever get into your smoking thing. I said, but I really have to ask. And she said, what? I said, we're outside. Your son's inside dying of lung cancer, and you're out here smoking a cigarette. Like, how does your mind grasp that? And she said, it's too late for me. She was like 70 at the time. And again, I didn't even go into the argument. It's not too late. That's her response to me, which she's entitled to. But yeah, it's that mindset. She passed away a few years later of bone cancer. So didn't smoke till the end. But it's a mindset. It's just like smoking, drinking, gambling, whatever. It's all a mindset shift. Is it easy? No. Can everybody do it? No. But can anyone that wants to do it? Yeah. And like I talk about with my client outreach, I'm like, anybody that can work with us, you just need to be able to roll up your sleeve and do the work. If you're not willing to do that, don't waste your money or time. Because that's what it takes. And I think the older generations, and I always laugh because my dad was a janitor, maintenance guy. My brother he was a mover. So they were very physical. They could fix anything. I don't know my way around a screwdriver, a hammer, or a wrench. Just never grasped that. They always thought my dad did. My brother always thought I was soft. He always says I had soft hands. And again, I'd always share the term with him that did you realize that women appreciate men with soft hands?
Yeah.
I said, just for the record, I said, just in case you might not have known, they don't appreciate your mallet type sandpaper hands.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Your dirty nails.
Exactly. But so each generation thinks the other generation is softer. You know what I mean? But it's just different. It's different skills, different things, different evolutions. So that's how I look at it. So the younger generation has hope. They have different skills. We might think they're soft, and in certain ways compared to us, they are. But like I always say, especially my grandparents, I was really soft. My dad was very loving and understanding. My brother had no patience. But just think of just 2 generations back. These men were working coal mines. They were laying railroad tracks. They were building their own houses. They didn't have like handyman. They were doing it. They were the handyman.
Yeah.
And then we move away from that. And you're like, Matt, he's got a phone number on speed dial for everything.
Yeah. It's hard to put it into perspective. Everybody's so closed-minded and worried about what they're doing, and it's really hard for them to be open-minded and place themselves in other people's shoes. And I think you do a really good job of explaining that and breaking it down for people who have a hard time seeing it.
I appreciate it.
Vision InSites is the simplest, most powerful security guard management software. No long training, no complicated systems. Guards can start reporting in minutes. Train your teams with micro trainings, attaching video to individual checkpoints to walk them through sensitive procedures. Submit accurate reports every time with dynamic observations that automatically rewrite, categorize, and prioritize, removing human error. And grow your business with daily, monthly, and quarterly insights, the most advanced reports available today. Vision InSites, the simplest, most powerful way to report.
Yeah, it's interesting too, hearing you talk, because when I had my company, it was about the customer. It was just doing the skills, because I didn't turn a wrench either. It's like, I think, how can I take what skill I took out in the street and bring it to the customer, because I cared about the customer, I cared about the business, and that's how SilverTrack was built. I tried to express it every day. I learned what the property manager's job, the maintenance guy, the residents' issues were, the visitors. I learned hey, what makes them tick? What makes I have a conversation with them?
Yes.
And then by having conversations, I learned about them, and then I incorporate that into the software. So,
Perspective.
yeah, that's how SilverTrack came to play. And I wasn't a programmer, I wasn't a tech guy. I just said, hey, here's how we have to make it work, and then here's the personalities that are going to use it. Here's the things that's going to make it difficult for them. Here's the things that's going to make it easy, and just applying those skills with the regular, which you talked today in business. I picked Matt out of a table of 20 people within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was an entirely different dynamic. It was like, out of all the people at the table, and I've said this in the last podcast, I picked him out quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. It definitely is. If you're in tune to people, like I said, we're given that skill. If you're in tune to people, will give you exactly who they are. And I work with women a lot too, and they're always like, how do you do that? And I'm like, especially on the woman's side, I said, you have to realize that when a guy is trying to, if he's narcissist or he's just not a good boyfriend, he's going to act. I said, he's acting a role of being a nice boyfriend. I said, it's very simple to figure that out. Pull out your chair, give you flowers, compliment you. I said, but you can see through that. How do you see through that? I said, it's like any actor. He has a script. I said, if you ask him questions off script, then you're going to trip him up. And they're like, really? And I'm like, try it. I said, because they're so set on being a good boyfriend, and women are just like, oh, I love the flowers. I love this. I love that. Oh, he's doing all the right things. He held the door for me. And it's just ask him questions outside. It's the same thing you do with interviews. If you ask people, because people will come with a script in their head, oh, I researched your company. I could be an asset. I want to work for you. That's all nice. Now let's go off the script. Just do things. There's one book back in the day. It was called Pushing the Envelope. And very interesting book, which I love because the guy produced envelopes. And he says, anybody out there in the corporate world, do you know who provides your envelopes? Do you know who provides your envelopes? Of course, the answer is no. Or do you care? So he said, so it's a business where people couldn't care less. He said, so it's the customer service. He said, he said the most important person was his receptionist, because she would contact everybody, would reach out to her, and she'd have communication with everybody. So he says, so he put a lot of effort. He said when he would hire his executives, and this was very cool, which makes perfect sense, he said he would take his executives on the interview process out to Disneyland with their family. He says there's no better way to tell how a person acts in their true character other than having them and their kids out of Disneyland.
That's awesome.
That's brilliant, because there's no way because we've all been there with people who just yank the kids and yell at the kids and they have meltdowns.
Not to interrupt you, Richard, but it's kind of like why you take people out golfing.
Yes.
You can see how competitive they are, breaking the club, how everything changes, right? Yeah, it's very, very, yeah, I love that. Let me ask you, go back to security a little bit. How'd you get into the security field? And you said you had a company now, if you want to share that.
Yeah, no, good question. So it was really weird how I got into security. So I got out of the Marine Corps, opened up my martial arts school, and then people just kept approaching me about doing security. Do you do private security? Can you do parties? Can you do events? I was like, I'm good. My martial arts school is good. I put a lot of effort into it, but I had a lot of free time, so I was enjoying that life. The bulk of the business was from like 5 to 9. So life was good. So then I kept getting inquired, and then 9/11 happened, so people were like, oh, you should try security. So anyway, I put in an application, didn't give it any thought, went away for a month and a half at that time. And then I come back and I get a message from, it was actually Allied at the time, saying, oh, we got an account for you. And this is how I met Rob Rogowski, funny enough. So I get a message saying, oh, we got an open position for you. So I go in and I speak to Rob, first time I met him, it's 2002, and he's selling this account. Oh, it's the county. It's awesome. It's like the gem of the company. It's beautiful. It's this, it's that. So I get down there as a supervisor, and I get down there, and they're on the brink of losing the contract. It was like the worst contract that you'd ever imagine. They were paying minimum wage. People are going downtown Wake County, which is North Carolina, having to park $25 back in the day for the day. And it's like the worst possible contract you could imagine. But again, I looked at it as a challenge. And they didn't have a lot in place since 2001, so it was a transition. So I'm like, okay, I could fix this. I'm a fix-it guy. So I implemented all of this training programs. In the first 3 weeks, I fired 65 people. And I had to go and sit in front of, we reported to the GSA, right, the General Services Administration for the county. And this woman was really tough. Her name was Kelly, and she was really fair but tough. So we're sitting across the long conference table, and then we have the assistant security manager there. And so she tells me, you have to explain why you fired 65 people. This is unheard of. This is ridiculous. And I said, where do you want me to start? And she says, you need to explain. I didn't have the list. She had the list. And I said, okay. I said, I had one woman. She was scheduled to work from 7 to 3. She would leave every day at 1 o'clock. She would have the mobile officer sit at the desk, and she'd go off to her other job. She says, really? How long was she doing that? I said, she told me for about 2 years. She said, how long did she do it with you? I said, the first day I found out, I told her. Second day, I gave her a warning. Third day, I fired her. She says, so she kept doing it. I said, yes. I said, she, in her mind, felt that the mobile officer didn't have much to do between 1 and 3, so it was really no issue, and then she could leave because she had another job. So she said, okay, but what else? So then I went down the list of the different firings. She said, okay, that's justified, but she said, could you do that for all of these people? I said, pick a name. I could tell you exactly why I fired them. And if you want them to be here working for you, that's on you. And so she says, all right, just don't fire like this. And I said, we're good now. I said, I just cleaned house. And so she says, I'll be watching your results. And I said, please do. And so I went about hiring the right people. And of course, I went back to Rob and I said, you told me that was like a cool account. And he says, wow, what was I going to do? Tell you the truth? Would you have went there? And I said, probably not. Probably not, Rob. Probably not. And so I was able to turn it around. And so that was my first real security job. And I loved it. I loved the challenges. I truly turned it around. And again, I did the people thing. I started hiring people because with the contract, they'll send people. And they'll come to me and they'll be like, do you want to work here? And they're like, no, I don't want to work downtown. I don't like this. I'm like, why'd they send you? Don't waste my time. So I was able to, again, I'm always bucking the contract company. So I cut out the recruiter, right? So I went to, Rob was my regional manager, and then there was a DM. I don't know if Dave Hamrick, he was in the business for many years. And so he was my, like, over Rob, however it's mapped out. So I told him, I said, I can't use a recruiter. They're wasting my time. He said, we'll see how this goes. So I basically just started recruiting people, and then people would come to me. So one lady comes to me and she says, hey, are you hiring? And I said, it depends. And she says, my husband. And I said, okay, your husband. She says, put it this way. She said, if you don't hire him, she said, you'll be responsible for his death. And I'm like, wow, that's very intriguing. Tell me more. And she said, he just retired from the Air Force about a month ago. She said, he's literally been sitting on the couch when I leave for work in his underwear. He's sitting on the couch in his underwear when I come home. She says, I put up with it for a month. She says, so if you don't hire him,
I'm going to kill him.
I'm literally going to kill the man. So I'm like, okay, Air Force retired guy, cool. So I bring him in, I hire him. They come to work together, holding hands, go to lunch together. Everybody's happy. I got an Air Force guy. Then I get a call. One of the security guys says, oh, Judge Kroom wants to see you. So Judge Kroom is a former law enforcement, former professional basketball player, 6'6", black guy, like the size of a house. So I'm going up in the elevator thinking, what in the world does he want? What am I going to have to tap that? So I walk in, and he's just very intimidating behind his desk. He says, sit down. And I said, how can I help you? He says, my brother-in-law is a school teacher. He says, and every summer, he says, I got to lend my sister money because he's not making any money. So he says, would you possibly be able to hire a security? And I said, for you? Sure. Yeah, not a problem. So then I hired his brother-in-law, who was a school teacher, for a couple of months in the summer. So I was able to parlay that. And then this is the funny thing, how life worked. So I hired a bunch of people to fill the staff. And then they had, which most companies have, you probably have too, they have a referral program that you get $50 for every hire you have. But they didn't put on there that the account managers were not entitled. So I go in there and I got 20 hires. And I'm like, I want my money. And of course, I forget who I talked to first. They're like, oh, no, you're a manager. And I says, yes, I am. And they're like, you're not qualified. I'm like, where does it say that? And they're like, wait right here. So they go off to the VP or somebody like, And so, of course, moving forward, they put in there, management's not allowed to take advantage of this. But I'm like, it doesn't say that I can. I referred people. I get paid. They wrote me a check. They were not happy, but they wrote me a check.
Great. You know what? I'm going to ask Richard to do something for us right now. And I want you guys to pay attention to this. It's really important. Okay? It's going to be off the cuff. We'll see if he feels like doing. Then I'm going to probably ask you, Matt. Richard, please explain to the listeners how to keep an account. Not just keep an account. What I want you to do is you're going to meet a customer, somebody's interested in security for the first time. They're going to walk in the door. Maybe that's rare these days because a lot of it, send me a proposal. I don't want to talk to you. I'll see you when I hire you. But when you went out to account, because I have my beliefs in this, and I stress this all the time, the importance of sitting down with good communication. Don't feel being rushed. And I don't want to say any more because I want to hear from you. You're walking into a door. Let's just take a residential community. Does that work, or commercial property?
Yeah, anyone. Yeah, I could take
Tell me how you introduce yourself to the client. What information you kind of want from them. What angles did you take to really get that information? So when you're done with it, okay, and you're going back to corporate, you're not coming back a second time. You're not coming back a third time. Some of the skill sets, if you wouldn't mind.
No, that's a great question. Very valuable for people out there because it's a skill that's lacking and it's not taught. Most people think, oh, they're good at speaking, they're good at this, so let them go. So what comes down to is a lot of stuff we touched on is when you go into a client, I personally don't like to do a lot of research. Some people do, they research the whole company. I don't because I don't want to go in there with a preconceived notion. So when I sit down, I just basically in conversation talk to them. And then I also look at the questions they ask me, right? Because one of the companies I took, like, oh, how do you handle leaks? So now I know, obviously they had a situation with a leak. So I give them my experience based on leaks. This is how you deal with it. This is how you fix it. This is how you do emergency contact. And then, of course, they share, yeah, just 2 weeks ago we had a situation. It wasn't addressed. There was no people contacting. They contacted the wrong people. So it's just basically, like we talked about earlier, it's just conversation, getting them to speak about the company and what they require of you. So to me, it's like I'm almost like absorbing, right? I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to try to sell myself. And I'll segue with one example. My business partner introduced me this super billionaire finance guy, right? So he's dealing with billions of dollars as a finance guy. And so it's the Indian community, so they're very tight. And he introduces me. We're sitting in this conference room, and they're talking, they're catching up, and they're talking monies and dollars and this and trading and deals. And so then he looks to me and he says, who are you, Richard? So there's lots of ways to handle it. And so this is my way, right? So I always say, be you for you. So all I do is I look at him and I say, I'm the guy that gets shit done. And he says, that's good to know. Right? So he didn't, because if I would have said anything else, he would have had some comeback. He would have challenged me. He would have questioned my ability. And so he's like, that's good to know. And he says, everybody needs someone like that. And another example, a good friend of mine, she's super powerful, actually the woman that does the cosmetics. She owns her own cosmetic distribution, and she's entrenched in Hollywood. The first time I met her, she comes next to me, and you can tell she's all that, right? Super high-end businesswoman, and she comes next to me, and she says, what do you do? And I said, I know people, and I get shit done. She hands me her phone, and she says, put your number in there. I need someone like you in my life. And we've been friends ever since. So, that's my things are off the cuff. And then another off the cuff. And again, this might help people, it might not. So again, when I help people, it helps certain people that are willing to go to the next level, right? Because I can teach you a script, but the script's not going to work for you. Another time I'm up at an event in Vegas. It's my buddy's event. And so he's introducing all the entrepreneurs in there at this high-end golf charity thing. And it's Craig Shaw, who you did down here, we did in Vegas. So anyway, I'm listening to all these people talk, and they're like, I'm in real estate. and this is all here, right? So I was like, I'm not going to go up there and go, I'm Richard, I'm in security. So what can I say? So I go up there and I say, hey, I said, I'm the guy that knows people and gets shit done. I said, I'm not going to mention any names. I said, but last night here in Vegas, I said, I got a call from someone in this room at 2 a.m. They needed handcuffs and a blindfold, and I delivered. And I just walked away. And of course, I was remembered, right? Because everybody comes up and they says, is that true? I said, I'll never say. So the thing is to be yourself, be you for you, be honest, because clients are very shrewd, especially people that are doing the procurement folks. If you go to them, if you go to the district managers, the GMs, whoever you go to, they've been there and done that. So I've always been pretty honest. One of my funny interviews, I was taking over as security director of a high-end mall in North Carolina, and I'm meeting with the GM and the facilities manager. And he says to me, what do you enjoy about shopping at our mall? So everyone knows how one should answer, right? We have the script. I say, I've never actually been in your mall. I said, I don't do malls. I said, I shop online. So some people might think that's not the best way to impress your client, but of course they appreciated my honesty. But I did say, I could run this business. I know about security. I know what your needs are. I know you're a soft target. I know, and then back then it was Homeland Security was big after 9/11. I said, so I know exactly what you're going to need, how to keep customer service, keep it flowing. And that was after the county. I said, I've worked the county, so I know how your customers have to come and go freely without having any restrictions or out seeing this major presence of security to feel unsafe. They want to come and flow. I can do that. And they hired me. Again, getting back to it, you have to listen to the client, let them speak because they'll tell you exactly what they want, exactly what they're unhappy with. I went to another account, and again, you don't have to mention names, but it's the La Jolla Country Day School. And I talked to them, and they told me everything they were unhappy with their current provider. So it's very simple to say, I don't do that. I can do it better. My guys don't do that. And then you make sure with your account manager or your director that this is what's important to the client. Because some clients, it's parking cars, don't park in the red zone. Some people don't care. Some people about this. So whatever is important to that client, you impress upon them that you see them, you validate them, and that I can, and make sure you can. Don't have any patience for people that overpromise and underdeliver.
Sure.
So the only thing, and I'll tell the clients, I can't do that. That's not in my wheelhouse. And that's getting back to with my clients at the pharmaceutical. We'd battle because they were asking us to do things that were not in accordance with what I felt. Like they're like, oh, security's standing around. Could they deliver flowers to the different cubicles? Can they go and deliver newspapers? Can they go and put tablecloths on the tables for the executive meetings? And I'm like, no, and more no. And some companies are like, that's in the other. And I'm like, that's not in the other. That's not in our security realm. Maybe you could find another company to do that, but we're not getting involved in that, providing lunch setup. That's not in our realm. And so sometimes you have to, and a lot of companies will continue to bend and then they muddy the water for everybody because then they're like, Joe Company did all that. And it's then stay with Joe Company because we're a security provider. We're not setting up lunches. We're not catering food. We're not cleaning dishes. And I've seen that all the time. And the same thing in the hotel world. They're like, since you're there, you can do room service. You can do cleaning tables. You can clean the pool and all of this stuff. So be clear what your offerings are, right? Same thing with you. When you offered the Silver Track back in the day, they're like, oh, can it do this? Can it do that? It's, no, it cannot. And then if it's legitimate, you say, maybe in the future we'll work on that. But some people ask some like bizarre questions of what they want something to do. Mm-hmm. And it's, you're only paying this amount, so you're not going to get this whole super deluxe package. If you want to customize, I can go back and I can write a script.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to pay for the script. And you get this very competent package.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as know your client, listen to them, and they'll tell you everything you need to hear, and not speak over them. Allow them to express themselves to the fullest, and then tell them exactly what you can provide based on their needs. And in most cases, I've found that their needs are reasonable. They have a very basic offices on time, offices looking good. The price is never really negotiable because everybody knows the prices. In this day and age with online, you can go in and know pretty close to what people are paying.
Sure.
You know, what the bill rates are. You even just do, you know, like word on the street. You walk by the local Starbucks next to ABC company and say, hey, dude, you work for ABC? How much they paying over there now? My son wants a job. Oh, I get $19.75 an hour. And there you go. Your intel's done.
Yeah.
So you'll have that basic information, but they'll tell you their wants and their needs because every company has different needs. Every client has different desires. But yes, sales is about connecting. If you don't, and I'm sure you're the same way. I don't do business with people I don't like. I don't have to like them like BFF. I'm talking about just have a general connection with them.
Yeah.
That they have integrity and that I like them. And then I use the Starbucks example, which is a great model. I travel frequently to different Starbucks as I travel, my wife and I. And my wife's very friendly and my daughter. So I'll go to Starbucks that she goes to that I don't. As soon as she walks in, it's the Norma cheers. Hey, Galito, hey, Alexa. They got our drinks ready. And then other places don't do that, right?
Yeah.
And which place are we more drawn to, right? When we can go A, B, C, and even drive an extra mile to go to that place that when you walk in, you feel like you're coming to cheers. Hey, Khalid. Oh, yeah, we got your drink. How you doing? Oh, yeah, how's the latest Star Wars movie? And just all of that. And these are Starbucks people, right? They're not making crazy money. But that atmosphere in that Starbucks compared to the atmosphere in another store, they all have the same manuals.
Yeah.
They all have be nice to the customers, greet the customers, use it by name, all this stuff. All the security has it. Your little poster, smile, greet, this. But some companies just do it better, and some locations do it better. And so I can see the major difference when I walk into a Starbucks. Some people are lethargic, and that comes down to the management.
Yeah.
It's bottom line. If your employees aren't motivated, they're all making the same amount, so it's not even money. And I go back to even a better example, like the hotel industry, the housekeepers. That's, to me, is probably one of the most difficult jobs that exists today. That's almost close to like coal mining. If you ever watch them flip king-size mattresses. I have an issue like doing my queen-size mattress with my wife.
Yeah.
Let alone do 50 rooms in 3 minutes each. They get paid low, but somehow, some way, you treat them right. They come to work every day, and they're positive. I never had any issue with any housekeeper. Never had a complaint that they were nasty. You've been around the hotel world. No. Never had any complaints that they were nasty or they were rude or they were this or that. The only thing that people are unrealistic, oh, it took them 3.5 minutes to clean my room. It's really.
I'll share. You know this. Anytime I go to a hotel and I'm leaving and I see them in the hallway, I always leave money on the table for them when they come in.
Absolutely.
Because if I figure if I give them the 20 spot or whatever it may be, I can almost guarantee I'm going to get probably a change of sheets.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless they're a bad person. My thought would be, hey, the person's putting me a tip. I'm going to make sure I clean this room well. I'm going to take care of it.
No, you're absolutely right.
Because maybe he's going to be here tomorrow.
Absolutely. That's
very
just
simple.
the human nature of understanding. That money goes a long way. Matt and I spent time in the hotel. I was standing there one time. I hand a guy a bottle of water. He hands me a 20. I was making decent money, but you give me a 20, I'm going to be a happy camper.
Yeah.
20 cash
Yeah.
money, water, cash.
Yeah, but that skill's gone.
Well, there's a reason why you can deliver handcuffs at 2 a.m.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that one. That's really, no, that's great advice. And Matt, everybody knows the market, small to mid-level, it's 80% of the market. Maybe it's higher or lower, I don't know. But those guys just don't have the skill set. And they go in, and they send anybody in there. Who does your sales?
We have, it really comes down to me and Joe. We hired Joe, and Joe's real personable and somebody who knows the guy and fun to be around. And I think that's kind of what Richard was talking about, just going off script. The script doesn't always work. A lot of times it's perspective. And when you're meeting someone for the first time, it's kind of like when you go on a blind date for the first time.
Same.
A lot of awkwardness. If you just sit down, develop rapport, ask the questions, and listen, I think there's a lot that you can learn. And then you just go from there and you figure out how you can help each other. And you're right. If you don't vibe with someone and that relationship's not going to work, then it's cool to say no and move on.
Yeah. I like lunch and learns because I do a lunch and learn. And I'd watch people around the table. Who's active? I'd look for the mats. I don't want 8 contracts. I don't care if everybody raised their hands. I want to pick the 2 people I saw that were proactive, raised their hand, had some legitimate questions, that were really wanting security for a purpose. They wanted to get involved. They wanted to solve their issue versus somebody that saw a way to maybe save them time or somebody. They weren't proactive. So I limited it because I didn't want all the eggs in one basket. Anyhow, if I'm working with a property management company, I wanted to work with one person, but I would do that. And then simply when I went in to talk to them, I'd just say, listen, I'm not going to burn you out. All right? How much time do you really have? Okay, I've got 10 minutes. Okay, let's just talk about the pain points and the key points of interest.
Yep.
What can I do for you that's going to save you time, money? What are your pain points? And I don't care if it's the water fountain you want inspected or the bird fountain that you guys love to have watched or whatever it is. Just give me the facts. Just tell me what it is. Let's just get through this and tell me just simple stuff versus trying to pitch my company and the stars and how we're different, because the industry sometimes doesn't have the best reputation. It's very hard. And they've got a bad taste, and there's not enough chocolate. I used to carry a chocolate bar with me and say, here's some chocolate to remove the bad taste from your mouth.
That's good.
That worked pretty good. They'd laugh. I bring a big Hershey bar in.
That always sticks.
Yeah, it works up pretty good.
I got this funny lunch and learn story I was doing. It's actually a company called ScanScout. construction company, and I go in there to do a lunch and learn at corporate headquarters and don't want to teach martial arts. So I'm in the elevator and I push the 4th floor and 3 women come in and they're like, oh, are you going to the lunch and learn as well? And I said, yes, I am. And they're like, yeah, we heard there's going to be a really cool presentation today. A guy's going to be talking about self-defense and, how we can protect ourselves. I said, yeah. I said, it sounds exciting to me, too. I said, I'm interested in that kind of stuff. So they don't know who I am at this point. So I'm chatting them up. So I go in, I sit down, I'm eating lunch, and we're chatting some more. And they think I work for the company, and we're chatting. And so then my friend gets up who invited me. He says, I'd like to introduce my master, Grandmaster Richard Gordon, who's going to take us through this. And so they're looking around, and then I get up, and I walk up front. They're like, because I always, same concept. I'd always do this. I'd always wear regular clothes when I did those demonstrations. So a lot of my peers would wear the martial arts uniform, and I get that. So same thing, you flip the switch. People got used to seeing that. Back in the day, it was cool and exciting. Then it got, So then I would just wear this. But then what I do too is I get up there and I say, okay, thank you everybody. It's summertime, so we're going to have a course on fireplace safety for your grill and stuff. There's lots of accidents this time of year, like 86%. I actually looked at the number, right? Yeah. I'm like, there's 86% of people get hurt with their barbecue grill, and they're like, and I'm like, are you folks in the wrong room? Like, so it's like things like that, to just be yourself and be memorable. Because it's like always the script say, oh, tell a joke. And then you get people telling a joke and they don't know how to tell a joke. They don't know the timing. Yeah. It's inappropriate, especially in our day. You get like a lot of the law enforcement military guys, they come out there with this really stupid racist or sexist joke. And you're like, dude, that wasn't really necessary.
Just turned off 80% of your audience.
Yeah.
Just right off the bat. And even the people like us that aren't turned off, we're like, shouldn't have gone there, dude. And all the jokes out there, you went to that one. But it's the same concept. So just be yourself, try to be unique. And the thing, I do a lot of network. I call it network like a VIP. And I say the first key, and people are not going to tell you this because they want to be, just don't be boring. That's it. So many people are so boring. Like, just don't be boring.
Yeah.
Your company be great, but if you're boring, I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to get to the company. I'm going to just tune you out because you're boring. And I don't want to work with someone that's boring.
Yeah, like that dry ice commercial. Right? Yeah, for sure. Richard, this has been fantastic. Let's finish this off. What are you doing today? Tell me a little about the company that you're doing a lot of different things.
Yes.
Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, and again, so people always talk about retirement, and it's, again, our age, I never looked at retirement. Like, to me, that's not my thing. I love to sit on the beach, but I built in my life where I can do that now, so I don't need to retire to sit on the beach. So I created with my business partner, Adisa Sanjay, my wife's Khalid Gordon, we created this company called Learn, Think, Share. And so we gave it a lot of thought. We wanted to help and give back based on our corporate knowledge, my business partners' total knowledge of how to be a CEO, for me, how to be an executive manager, because I sat at all the high-level tables as well from the security side. My wife's just a brilliant operations person, so she takes our visions and puts them into reality. Because, again, we're both clear, high thinkers, and we're not the type to just put it out there. So what we do with that is we're working with executives, we're working with managers, we're working with entrepreneurs that want to get to the next level. So we talked about mindset. So we're helping them with ancient techniques that have survived the test of time. It's not voodoo. It's not all this. Like people think when you say ancient, they're like, oh, it's woo. No, it's just principles that have survived the test of time. How to keep your ego in check, how to be kind, how to focus your energy, how to have self-confidence, and then apply that to a modern time. So we're taking a historian and my partner. I have a vast history knowledge as well. So we're taking all of that and applying it to the modern corporate person, how they switch their mindset to become successful at a higher level, how they switch their mindset to not be a frontline supervisor, because again, you have to change mindset. So we have courses online that you can take. We have courses will come to your corporation and we'll walk you through this step by step, how to change your life. I don't take you and give you anything because there's nothing for me to give. I guide you. I help you with your value. That's the thing we talked about and didn't use the exact word, but what we use is the value, right? People they don't see their value anymore because people squash their value. School, corporate, your first job, sitting down at a meeting. If your adversary in business is very good, the first thing they're going to do is try to devalue you, right? If Matt shows up, they're not going to say, dude, you're like the greatest company. You're so cool. You got everything done, because then that increases the price. So what they want to do is devalue him. So now we can give you a price. You're medium, you're small. You don't have the reach that Allied has. You don't have the reach that this person has. So they're trying to devalue. And unfortunately, society does that. And even when you play basketball at the local community center, You get the little pompous guy that's trying to diminish your skills. What are you doing, old man? You ain't got no shot. You got no jumper. It's in jest, but it still comes back into that devaluing.
Yeah.
So we're looking to guide people. Again, you have all the skills. Matt has all the skills. So we're just looking to guide people along the way to have a more successful life. By knowing your value, when you come in, getting back to when you come in with a client, when I go with clients, I know my value. So if they don't want my services, that's fine. It doesn't devalue me, which a lot of people do. They feel dejected. I've never felt dejected. I just feel it's not the right fit because I have value. And so we teach people how to follow their path to get their internal value. Once you value yourself, then people around you will begin to respect you. Everyone that you deal with will see you as a value, and therefore you will have a whole lot more success.
Okay. Say that again, how important that is. Value yourself.
That's where it starts. That's where it starts because people will attribute to you whatever they want, and it's based on them. It's based on their position, their ego. A lot of companies want to keep people down. They want to keep a person who's doing a good job. So they don't want to promote them out of the good job. So they keep them down. They don't give them opportunities. So once you value yourself, and I unfortunately, to companies, they don't like me because I just had a guy transferred out 2 weeks ago because I told him, I said, what are your plans? You're just like walling away here. And he says, you're right. And I said, when was the last time you sat down and decided what you wanted to do? And he said, it's been a while. So he decided he wanted to get himself, like, still in the security, but he wound up going to another company, a new account, got $5 more an hour and in a more pleasant environment. So he calls me, he says, thank you, because he lost value, because he just showed up for work every day. His value was to show up for work every day and fill a post, just to be a body, be a body, be a body, be a body. And I've always give value. I always give value to my employees. I always give value to people that work for me, the receptionists, the housekeepers. I went back to LeBaird's for the opening day, and all of the housekeepers high-fiving me, the bartenders high-fiving me, the waitstaff high-fiving me because I gave them value. And so we talk about seeing people. Once you see people and you give them value, people will go to the end of the earth for you. It's not a matter of pay. You can pay someone a high salary, and if they don't have a value in themselves or you, they're not going to give you 100%.
Tell me if I'm right on this, James. It can be as simple as I'm an owner in my business. My secretary's out there. I've got employees in the office. And somebody calls and I go, tell them I'm not here. I'm not here. Just tell them I'm not here, whatever it is, right? And then the next call comes in and you say, oh, I don't want to talk to him. Tell him I'm not here. Tell me the employees don't look at that and go, man, this guy just shuts people down. Tell them how that affects it. It's really basic, right? Seems very basic.
And absolutely. I take that to the flip side further. What's even funny about that, and this exists because I've seen it, you've seen it, we all seen it, outside your door is that big poster that says open door policy. We're available. And so all of these posters that the people are handing out is just that. So yeah, you need to not only talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. So I've always been accessible, and it's always baffled people because they're like, oh, you're a global security director. Like, why are you talking to me? And one guy, it was the county accounts. I was just a director at the time. And I went to visit him. He was at one of the buildings. And he said, I've been here 15 years, and I have not seen a director the whole 15 years I've been here. He says, you're here day 2. I said, that's unfortunate, but you're going to see me on the regular. Because why would I not come to this building and see you? And he says, cool. And it turned out to be a very cool situation. Again, going to the next level. He's asked me where I'm from. I tell him Brooklyn. He's from Brooklyn. Then he tells me that he'd driven a bus for 30 years in Brooklyn. And I said, what bus? He tells me the number 5. And I'm like, the number 5 went through my neighborhood. And he says, so you were one of the kids that used to hang on the back with the ice and climb in the back door and climb out the windows? I said, guilty. And so, of course, that bond went way beyond the basic, hey. And so every time I saw him, we talk about Brooklyn, we talk about the bus, we'd have a good chuckle. So, yeah, it's definitely availability at any level, and especially if you can get a CEO's ear. At the pharmaceutical, the CEO used to ride in the elevator, of course, but he used to talk to people. And a lot of the people, I'd be in there, a lot of the workers, of course, they didn't do their homework, right? They didn't know that was the CEO because he was just in there chatting. So they didn't anticipate that from a CEO in the elevator of his corporate building. He'd go to the top floor, but they would just like, and I'd laugh, and I'd say to them sometimes, I said, did you realize that's the CEO? And they're like, no. Didn't realize that because he came in casual. Hey, how's everybody doing today? Oh, that's a nice briefcase you got there. And then people would he'd just make them casual and chat. So that's the key, is you have to make yourself available, not just have the slogans, especially if you're really like high level, take a couple of minutes. That's not a minute. And funny, I had a friend who's hotshot attorney. He was a prosecutor up in D.C. Then he owned this firm in North Carolina. So we're really good friends. And I would always pop by to see him. I have a habit of doing that. I just pop in to see people. And so he'd always let me in. The receptionist would just let me walk in. And so as soon as I walk in the door, if he had no time whatsoever, he would stay behind his desk. And I'd walk in, I'd say, hey, just want to say, hey, talk to you soon, and I'd leave. If he had a few minutes, he'd be leaning on this side of the desk. And I'd walk in, we'd chat for 5-minute catch-up, I leave. If he had time, he was sitting in the sofa. So he had a strategic about how much time he can give, but he never denied me, and I respected that. So if I saw him sitting at the desk, I'd literally walk in, I'd say, Kieran, great to see you. I said, this is literally like in place of a text. Hope you're doing well, call me, and then I'd leave. So that's how he was able to gear his time, but never denied me. Not once did he say, can't come in, keep him at the door. And again, but it goes both ways. So you respect that person's time. But yeah, you have to be accessible. And then people, during business hours, like I was never in my office during business hours doing paperwork. Matt could tell you, when we were at LeBage, we were walking around all the time. Like his job was to walk around, and I was with him the whole time. That's how we got to be good friends, too. We'd be walking around, chatting and shooting the breeze and just communicating on what was important. And yeah, you have to be available at any level. And even, of course, you're going to get busy where if you're at the COO, CEO level, you can't. But then you have people underneath you that are your spokespeople, that they're the ones out there meeting and greeting. That has to be built into your system. You just can't be detached because, and most times, real world is just like the military structure, law enforcement. You get the middle level management, it comes back to ego, that they're the least approachable, because they feel like they're like really important. And I used to love that when the CEO was in the elevator, he'd be talking to people, and then you get like the middle level manager that come in and he'd be acting like he was too important to talk to anybody.
Or it's that CEO who's available, and the middle layer managers are like, you can't talk to the CEO. And it's like, wait a minute, dude, like I talk to you every day. So your middle layer managers, your account managers, supervisors, they could add unnecessary barriers that are not needed. Mm-hmm. I wanted to. You told me a story a long time ago. It stuck with me. I think it's relevant because I think a lot of, because we talked about opportunity, right? We talked about opportunity, making people feel good. And just like the story you shared where you open up that, or you plant that seed for that employee to go look for better opportunities because he felt that this was the opportunity he only had, the only opportunity he had. But talk about, you shared a story with me about an employee who'd been working night shift for several years, had the opportunity to work day shift, and then it just wasn't a good fit. And I want you to share the story because you tell a really good story. But this is relevant because people,
no, you're right.
The guard companies, and guards, this happens all the time.
Yeah, and that story goes in lines with listening. You have to listen, and you have to continue to motivate people and ask them if they're going to school and do that. So the scenario was, I had a gentleman working nights for me 15 years, just reliable, dependable, great overnight guy. So he calls me up in the day and he says, hey, could I switch to days? And I said, absolutely. He says, really? Just like that? I said, you did your time. You're 15 years at nights. I said, why do you want to go to days? He said, I recently got divorced. And I said, yes. He said, I got a new girlfriend, so she wants me to be home at night. And I'm like, whatever. Start tomorrow, you do days. So he comes in, and it was a corporate setting, a pharmaceutical corporate setting. So they had a switchboard, they had all the deliveries, the guests, all this stuff going on. So he's training with the receptionist the first day, which is a Tuesday. Then he calls me up Wednesday, like at 10 o'clock. He starts at 8, and he says, yeah, I hate to do this. He said, but this just isn't working. I said, what do you mean? He says, I can't handle this switchboard and there's calls. And he's waiting for my response. I gave it a little poetic pause, and I said, dude, you're a night dude. Of course you're not going to survive in the day in a corporate setting. When you walk in, you got peace all night. There's no phones ring. And he says, would it be too much trouble to go back? I said, I never filled your position. I said, I gave this little trial run. And I said, so what are you going to tell your girlfriend? He said, she'll have to get used to it. He said, because I cannot do days. So just listening, I listened to him. I gave him what he thought he wanted. But because some people are night people. It's a different breed answering the switchboard and dealing with all this, that. So he happily went back tonight, worked for me in nights years.
Yeah, but you know what I love about this story is just the amount of disconnect that supervisors, managers have with their employees. Richard knew. He said, dude, I'll give you 48 hours, man. I didn't have to go panic and worry about filling that schedule. And this kind of ties into hiring those people. I think you had shared a story with me, like hiring the hard chargers for a job that is not or doesn't need a hard charger. Just recognizing that fit isn't the right fit, or whether he may have be the most qualified or the overqualified. If he just doesn't have the right fit or the right personality for that position, it doesn't mean that they're unqualified. It just means that you're probably doing them a favor by not forcing a square peg into a round hole. And I think, Richard, you do that extremely well. And I think a lot of CEOs have a hard time doing that with their employees, but sometimes they have a hard time doing that with customers too. When you talk about just trying to surround yourself with, most companies have a hard time. Like, they're growing the company, they've got to be able to figure out how to make relationships work, right? They need the business, they need to grow and to increase their cash flow. But then you get to a point where you don't have to force every sale or force a relationship with customers that may not work out. So I got to tell Joe, Joe, I really want to align myself, like in this year, with customers that we absolutely align with. Those customers that are taking notes in the meeting, those customers that are open to taking your call and making themselves available. And I think most times when that relationship is there and that rapport is there, like, you're not only going to have a good business relationship, you're going to have a long-lasting friendship. And they're going to know that they can always rely on you and count on you being there and getting things done. And I think when I look around this room, that's how those relationships are formed, and they become everlasting. And I think it's refreshing for me. I've heard these stories 10 times, thousands of times, and I still get goosebumps when I hear the stories. And I think it's just relatable. And I can see you, I know you feel the same way. So for me, it's refreshing, and it's very cool to be able to share these stories and these people with one another and see where it goes.
Yeah, it was, Richard is absolutely, again, a real pleasure being here. And then also, I'm very interested, and I want you to share before we get off this podcast more about your business or how people can get a hold of you, because the security industry would love to hear. I know when they watch us, they're just going to love the fact that there's a guy out there that I can actually talk, get real. It's not just business, but it's real. It's personal. Like, where was it going with this? With the client. You have supervision out there, whether they're trained or not, and you say, hey, have you contacted the client? Yeah, I called her, but Becky's busy. And she said, but she said everything's okay. So you think you're sitting at an 8 or 9 or 10 on your weekly sync, if you have one as a company, and you're trying to figure out where all the customers sit. As you get big, the owner goes away, everybody starts off small, you're the one making all the phone calls, you're the one talking to everybody, you develop that. And it's hard to pass it down, so that's a whole nother skill. Yeah. But as a supervision, just tell them just a very simple, in the very beginning, start with the sales guy to say, Becky, the one thing I have to do, the one thing we really care about is obviously customer support. Matt preaches it, okay? So please, tell me what the best way to contact you. Is it text, phone, or email? But I got to have, whether it's just 5 minutes of your time, here's the things I'm going to ask you, but I got to have that call, and I got to know we were sitting. I got to know where we're at. Just an honest approach. You just tell me, hey, everything's great. I know you're busy, but just that genuine, I'm going to call you. Tell me what best time to call you. How do you want to be contacted? So you can get that, so you know where you sit with your client, right? Just to teach that small skill to your supervisors. And again, it starts from the very beginning of the relationship with the client. Just simple stuff, and that's what we're talking about. You're talking the very basic stuff.
Simple formula. We had a transition at the mall, and the new GM started. That's the first thing I said to him. I said, do you want to meet, or how do you want to do it? And he said, your office is next to mine. He said, if I have something really important and you walk by, I'll wave you down. Other than that, I know where your office is. And so that was his thing. So I knew exactly how because he's, I don't want meetings, I don't want emails, I don't want any of that. Just, I know where you're at, and if I need you, I'll get you. But that's his preference, and other people need more touch. So yeah, it's about a touch. So working with the Learn, Think, and Share, we're looking at helping the security industry, law enforcement industry, and military, because they're dealing with high stress, they're dealing with lots of issues that can be helped with mindset. So that's why I look at problems. I analyze a lot of stuff. My business partners, he can tell. He's lived all over the world, so he can tell you all the different capitals. Just a quick example on that. We met with a woman, and she was talking about that her husband was stationed. She was stationed with her husband in Yangon in the Marine Corps. Does everybody know where Yangon is?
I did, but that's okay.
There you go. So that's what makes the story even better.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there talking the first time we met her, and she says, I was stationed in Yangon. Because I said something about the military, Marine Corps always puts you in godforsaken places. So she brings up Yangon. So you were in the prison tower. She says, what? He says, it's a tall building. He says, in those East Asian countries, he said, the Marine Corps puts in these high-rise buildings. He says, so that's so the enemy can know exactly where you all are. And she said, yeah. She said, I lived on the 27th floor. And he says, so you could see the Mangunji temple. And she said, yeah, every time I wash dishes, I could see the Manguni temple. And he says, did you shop at the Gojguji market? And she said, actually, I did. Every day I'd go get fresh vegetables. And so that's the knowledge he pulls out. And I look at him like, how do you know that? And he says, I work with the Yangon government to install their transportation software systems. He says, so I spent like a year there working with the president of Yangon. And I'm like, who knows that stuff? So our goal is to take that knowledge, which again is like in the 0.5%, and then with me and him, we interpret it to help law enforcement, to help the security, to understand the mindset shifts. So we're not going to, because skill set is one thing, right? Because a lot of people have skills, right? It's like anything. You'd be an athlete. We've all done the sports. You can have a wrestler that has great ability, but if he doesn't have the right mindset, he's not going to be accomplished. You can have someone who has mediocre skills. They talk about that with the, what's the other ones beside the Gracies, the brothers? It'll come to me in a minute.
You're talking about the ones from Fresno?
The Machados.
Oh, the Machado. Okay.
Yes, the Machado brothers. So he's got the half hand. So he's got. You familiar with them? Mm-mm. But anyways, he's got a half a hand. So again, he can't be a great Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy because he's got a half hand. But so he learned every technique around that. Yeah. And so wrestling someone that doesn't have both hands like everybody else you wrestled in your entire life,
it's going to trip you up.
It's a whole different game. Yeah. So that's the key, is just looking at the mindset of what makes people succeed. And so we're working with the security, law enforcement. And the beauty is, it's again, double-edged. So law enforcement is very high on our programs, but their budgets can't afford us. We're willing to work on price, but again, we're not going to cheap it down. You can't give away stuff that's valuable for cheap. But so law enforcement loves our products. We talk to them. They love it. They love everything about it. And so we're looking to help to get funding, maybe do some sponsors to help get in there and help them with the mindset. Because the same thing, skill set in law enforcement, you've been there, security, you go through your basic training. I've taught baton, I've taught the ASP, and the ASP always cracks me up, and I'm always an advocate with my own industry because I always buck the teaching. So I'm certified to teach the baton back in North Carolina, and I'm taught the OC spray. And everybody teaches like you're pounding the pad with a baton. How is that applicable to the real world? Like you wonder why people are pounding people with a baton, but meanwhile you have a 4-hour class where everybody goes up there and they pound the pad with a baton. And so I taught mindset, like how do you apply the baton? When do you apply the baton? Most states, 4-hour certification. That's how you do OC spray. Have a good day. That would be the extent of it.
Yeah.
But it's mindset, how to use it, when to use it. How to deploy it, how to have your distance, how to use every other skill in the book, how to know that's what you need to go to next. How do you know the progression of when it's going to be necessary, which they don't teach. They teach it how to deploy it. Okay, everybody come get sprayed. And I get that value, but I've been sprayed so many times, it didn't give me any more knowledge.
Yeah. Richard, next time you teach that class, would you do me a favor? Will you tell them, don't mace the suspect and then put him in your partner's car, okay? Because the fumes get everywhere.
Oh,
right?
I know. And that's a big mistake, too. All the clothes people get on a plane after they've been through the course. So, that's no joke. I had one of my young martial arts students. He was a real hard charger. He's going to be years black belt. So he wants us to experience it because he sees all the wimps online, he says. This is how he phrases it. I saw all the wimps. I said, okay, let's sample it. I didn't even give him I just gave him 2 squirts. And that's what if you've been through it. When was the last time you went through it? We need to spray you again, man. You need to be up on that stuff.
No, I don't.
You do. Your officers are out there on the front line. You need to know. That's when you got trained. When you become an instructor, you have to get sprayed. It's every 2 years. And I'm like, I've been sprayed 67 times. What do you think is going to be new this year? And even worse than that, we had one instructor come in one time, this cool female. She was from Denver. And she's, I know, I don't want to hear it. I know I got some senior folks out there. You're griping. You got to go through this class again. So she takes out like a keychain, like a little lanyard. And she's got 62 certifications. She says, I'm a nationwide instructor, and I had to certify in 62 different jurisdictions to teach OC spray.
Oh, my God.
She says, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you guys griping that you got to go through this again.
Oh, my God.
And then she mapped out like each different state, because they want their little monies. So she'd have to go through their official, because for a long time it was Defensive Technologies was the approved one. I'm like, how do they get approved? It's OC spray. Like, what science do they have in teaching OC spray? But you had to go through Defensive Technologies.
It's fun, too. And it's good. It's good for them.
Yeah, there's no doubt, but it's just a money grab.
In the county, what they would do, they wouldn't mace us individually. They put tear gas in a big building.
Yeah, mace you all together. Dude.
But before they would put furniture in there, and they'd walk in the building before they filled it up. And you go in, you look around, okay, and you're getting a visual. And then you come out and they go, okay, now we're going to gas this room. And you're going to have to figure your way out. And then when you get in, I want to hear your name, your class number, and because they want you to breathe.
You got to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when they gas, they go in there and they move all the furniture around because you're thinking, okay, I'm going to come in the door and I'm going to go over here. Then you trip and you fall over and you take a deep breath. And Richard was saying that people come out, oh man, they got snot everywhere,
Oh, yeah.
and and then they go put water on it, which
Makes
makes
it
it
worse.
worse.
Or rub it,
Makes it
you know,
worse.
rub
And they're
it.
rubbing
yeah.
it, and they're, just falling out.
Yeah, we do that in the Marine Corps too. We have the gas house, which is miserable. Like, again, people say it's cool. I'm like, I don't care how tough you are, how cool you are. It's been miserable every time I've done it. And I always say this too. It doesn't say it on the bottle or in all the specs, because I taught the course. It doesn't say anything about affects your breathing. And I'm saying I could write a study that every time I've done it, it affects my breathing. I'm not tense. I'm not scared. It gets in my system. And I just feel like I get all choked
Can't
up.
breathe.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But if you read any literature, it doesn't say anything about affecting your breathing. I'm like, that's a lie. That's a lie.
You know what's funny? We've all done the gas chamber. I think we all could remember like every second
Oh,
of,
of course.
of that
Yeah, certain things are
exercise.
burned in you.
Yeah.
Certain things are burned in. Of course, you had
That was
the
ingrained in me forever.
yeah, people that were running out, people that do it. To me, I was like, of course I want to run out, but I'm like, I'm not going to do it again. So I'm going to stay in here as long as I have to get it done one time, because then some people would leave or didn't do it right, and they'd have to go back in. To me, that would be the worst case scenario. They'd have to go right back in.
Yeah. I cheated.
I'm sure you did.
I held my
I'm
breath.
Sure you did.
I held my
As long
breath.
as you could,
I
huh?
practiced holding my breath really good, and then I went in the corner and I just wait for the door to go back, to let everybody fall and trip, and I just listened to the noise. And then when I saw the light, then I felt myself along the wall.
You're
Right.
brought last in line.
Yeah, in the Marine Corps, they don't let you cheat because you have to say your name.
Yep.
You have to say your social, and then you have to do jumping jacks.
Yeah.
So they know those tricks. So, yeah, you have to say your name, say your social,
Yeah.
and then do jumping jacks.
Marine Corps is a lot smarter than the police officers.
Oh, yeah.
That's for sure.
Even for guards, it's the guards that have never been OC sprayed that want to go OC spray everybody.
Oh, that's what I said.
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
once you don't, if
be
you don't
doing that.
understand it or respect it,
Yeah.
Matt, we'll get this thing closed out here, but you obviously have been working with Richard for quite some time. Everybody looked at your last podcast and saw the growth that you had with your company. It's a combination of everything, just the basics and things that you've learned, obviously with working with Richard and your own skill set and managing your team.
I think, dude, it's meeting people at the right time. I think people, they come into your life at the right time and they have certain things that you're meant to learn from. And I think when I met Richard, I was still relatively new. I had never worked in the garden industry before. And all I knew is I was responsible for managing his account, managing the people that were working his account. And so every chance I had a chance to be around Richard and to be involved in the hotel, I took that opportunity every single time. But what I've learned is there's customers that care. We did the opening day event for the Del Mar Fairgrounds. And one thing that Richard would share with me is most companies would care about wristbands and attendees not having wristbands. Richard was like, dude, who cares? They're going to spend thousands of dollars at the bar. Just manage the behavior after the fact. Just make sure they're not jackasses. And so for me, that was cool because most young guys would be like, oh, I care so much about this wristband, I got to go kick him out. And Richard, he would tell me, he goes, dude, this is a lot of high dollar event. People are here to enjoy it and have a good time. And people remember when you're kicking people out, people remember it. And you're not looking at just making money or revenue for that night. You're looking at making revenue for each of the following years that they look to come back. And I learned a lot about prioritizing what was important, what wasn't important. And then just figuring out, taking the initiative to get things done. Security gets a lot of wild requests. And you want to be the guy that can simply meet the things, just get stuff done. And I think if you learn anything just from that level, what are our clients looking to get from us? Yeah, it just goes back to, hey, are you going to be someone that I can trust, someone that I genuinely like, and are you someone that's going to get things done? And I think that's a good message. I think that's a good message. And I've learned a lot from Rich, and our friendship has gone a long way. And there are times, even today, we did the FM Global event for a large EP company that was out of state at the Broadway Pier. And it was a fun event, and I knew Richard would want to be there, and I invited him, and he came out and he helped us out. And I remember a conversation we were having on our way to the event. I was like, hey, Rich, what are you doing these days? And he was telling me, I'm going to go to an event this night or this day. And what I learned is if you want to get out more and you want to meet people, you got to get out more, and you got to meet people at every opportunity you can get. And that's the same thing with clients. Same thing with managing your employees. Every opportunity you have to go do something, to go meet somebody or go experience something new, just go do it. Don't make it complicated. Just take the opportunity and go do it, and go into it with an open mind, and you'll find out that either you won't like it and you'll never do it again, or you'll like it and you'll do it, but you'll learn a lot about meeting different people. And those relationships will lead to things that you least expect them to lead you to. And I think that's the valuable lesson. I learned a lot from Richard just by evaluating the circle And then just being open to trying new things out and making yourself available and keeping that open mind perspective that people are ultimately looking for.
And that's the great thing Matt brings to the equation. He talks about open mind, and so he's humble. So when you're humble and you're open minded, and he's willing to learn. So that's why you're in this circle, because again, we have a lot of knowledge here, which you're taking advantage of, and a lot of people don't. But we're collectively not going to waste our time. If someone doesn't heed our advice, it's not that everything I say is golden. But no, you've been an open book, and you've been willing to listen and learn. And then we have dialogue, which is the beautiful thing. Because some people you talk to with advice, and you just talk at them. But again, that's where I come up with the learn thing, because you have to learn. Everybody can learn, but you have to think about it. You have to process it. And you do that. You process what I tell you, and then you take my stories and you take, which is the way it's designed, and you apply it to a situation, which not a lot of people do. So that's your strong suit, and that's definitely what helps you succeed, not only in life, but friendships. Because, yeah, we could have been casual acquaintances, maintain that. We all have that. Text somebody every now and then, hey, bud. But you're a guy that is truly worth investing in. And even my wife, the first time she met you, even before she met you, just based on the text, she said, that's a good guy. So that's what comes across, and that's your biggest asset. And that's why you're an asset to the security business, because you bring that to the equation. And like we talked about, no matter how big you grow, you will never be detached from it being you. Because I was just at that conversation with my mother. She said, oh, he's a 70-year-old grumpy old guy. And I'm like, Ma, he was a 40-year-old grumpy guy. He just grew to be 70 and grumpy. Yeah. So certain people do have things that make them change. But the beauty of you, and again, we're good at assessing character. That's why we picked you to be part of our little core group, is because your integrity is not changeable. And that's what integrity is. It's you will not compromise. You will not change. And that's what integrity is not one way, one day the next day. So people that I've known collectively, we talk about people we know for 30 years, your integrity stays intact. You might do things that I don't agree with, or people do things that are not how you would do it, but it doesn't stray from integrity. Wouldn't you agree?
100%, Richard. I can't even, I love the mindset. I'm going to really dig into your consulting business.
We're going to talk more. We're definitely, this is just a start. We definitely have to sit down without Matt tagging along. We got like high-level stuff we need to talk about.
Yeah. Go to the table. Sure. But I hope everybody learns too, because Matt was here on the first podcast, and he goes, oh, that guy went to a $10 million business, and they think it was a recipe for just putting guards in a uniform. And what you can see now, especially on your second visit here, that changes everything. And Matt, you're going to have to take it, okay? You're right. You got the integrity. I noticed it quickly. It's amazing how fast I picked it up. Just watching at the table, the difference. And you've earned everything you've done. And you grab the right people, you listen. And I enjoy speaking to you. When you call me and we talk, I really enjoy talking to you, because I know you're calling me for a reason, and it wasn't just, okay, I got to go right now. You know how many calls I get a day.
Yeah, it didn't happen overnight, but I got to tell you, we're even at $10 million. You have $10 million problems. You have $1 million problems.
Of course.
You have $3 million problems.
Every rung of the ladder. Every rung of the ladder.
I wanted to interject at the time, but Richard was talking about, hey, I'm checking in. How are you? Hey, I'm checking in. How are you? And I think Richard does that really well. There are times where he'll call me or he'll send me a text, and I know it's just him checking in. And I try to do that with the circle of people that I respect, that I look up to. But it just keeps it fresh, man. It just keeps bumping the emails to the top of the email list. But for me, I think it's been a lot of fun. Even with Joe, we're getting out more, collaborating more with customers. And it's just, you're just going out there hunting with your best friend, and you're developing new relationships. And I think that's what makes it fun and refreshing.
Yeah, I love Joe. I'm going to part of here, just coming to part of the podcast. There's a lot of changes, but yeah, Richard, if you do me that honor, that'd be great. I'd love to have you here. It's been
and Matt did attend the party. Matt did attend a party with me like 4 months ago called the Teddy Ball, and he got a chance to see how I roll. But he was with the wife, so he had to watch what I do from a distance. And I'm very happily married, but my thing is I like women. I like intelligent women. My wife's cool with that. So when I go to these events, I have a cachet of models that I deal with. And so Matt was very happy to see me in action.
It was cool. We took our whole team.
Did you learn other things?
We took our whole team. And it was a day out of the office for them. But yeah, we learned a lot. A lot.
See, I like that, Richard, because first thing I got when Joe walked in, he says, hey, you're going to get Richard. He's as old as you. Like, okay. Like, oh, great.
One more story.
Just keeping it
probably
simple.
The funniest story that I've ever, one time I sat down with him for a couple hours, but tell him the story about the guy at the golf course, the black guy.
Coolio?
Yeah.
Oh, Coolio,
yeah. This is funny.
Oh, yeah, so you're familiar with Coolio, right?
No.
When you
He sings,
the
he sings Gangsta Rhapsody.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
So anyway, so we're doing an event at the Viejo, and he's performing there for an event that I'm doing with one of my friends. And so I get to know him, we hang out, and then we're going to do a golf tournament, which actually Matt was involved in the golf tournament here in Carlsbad. So I say to him, I said, oh, you're going to go to the tournament. How are you getting? He said, I'm going to take an Uber. So I said, no. I said, my friends are going to give me a ride. I'll give you a ride. Of course, we just met. He says, okay. So he says, but I got like stuff. I got clubs and I got my baggage. I'm like, that's fine. So we're standing outside, and I call my friend up, and he's still sleeping, and it's him and his girlfriend. I said, hey, I said, Chip, would you mind giving me a lift down to Carlsbad to the golf tournament? He said, not a problem. I said, but do you have enough room for Coolio? And he's like, what? Coolio? And I'm like, yeah, Coolio. He's like, oh, yeah, of course, I'll be right down. So he comes running down with his girlfriend at the time. And so now I'm still standing outside with Coolio, and he's got his golf clubs because he's really a golfer in his bag. And so he's like looking for cars. He's just basic conversation. But you can see we're like in different galaxies, right? Because he's looking at me, because again, it's like I'm not the straight white guy. I'm Mexican Irish, but people look at me as like the white guy. So he's looking at me as the white guy. And I'm like, right on, cool, dude. So that's where I know I'm at, right? Yeah. So we're just chatting a little bit. Anyway, so then my buddy's vehicle pulls up, and he's from Utah. So he's got like this monster truck, right?
Okay.
And so I said, come on, let's go. And Coolio's like, that's all right? I'm like, yeah, what'd you think we were going to have, a little Prius or something? So he's, oh, cool. So he throws his gloves in the back. And then so him and I are sitting in the back. And Chip and his girlfriend Brooke are in the front. And so it's still casual. Coolio's sitting there like polite, like on a school trip or something. We're just making small chit-chat. And so now I'm chatting him up. We're getting a little more fluid because we are the same age we were until he passed. So Coolio was our age. Right? So he grew up in Compton, which is similar to the Brooks. So anyway, so we have a lot in common. So then he says, oh, Chip, what do you do? And Chip says, I'm an author, I'm a copywriter, and I do things in the literature field. And he says, Brooke, what do you do? And she turns around, she says, I'm a sex surrogate. And he says, you're what? So she says, I'm a sex surrogate. He said, what does that actually mean? She says, people that have an issue sexually, she said, I go in and I help them. He says, you do what? And then he looks at Chip and he says, she does what? And Chip turns around and he says, yeah, that's what she does. And he says, so that's your girlfriend? And he says, God damn, brother. And then he leaves up between the seats. Then he leaves up between the seats. And he's, you got to tell me more about this. And so now this was like the first 5 minutes. So now the next drive from Viejo back to Carlsbad was just off the chain. And so then we're sitting there and Coolio's telling us, he says, yeah, he said, I got some new music I'm working on. He said, plug it into your phone. So we're plugging in Coolio's music, blasting Coolio music, still really intrigued by what she does for a living. He's like, you white people are crazy. He says, white people really pay for that stuff? And she says, professionals that are having issues, and I come in and I help them with their issues. And he's like, oh, that is so cool.
Yep.
And then, I don't know if I told you that part of the story. So I stayed in Carlsbad because that's where I live. And so they drove him back to Viejo, and they stop at a TJ Maxx. And so they go in together, and he's with Brooke, and he's like, oh, you need some sneakers? And she's like, not really. He's like, these would look cute on you. So he hands them to her. And then he's got sneakers, he's got some other stuff, and then he's walking. Everybody's like, Coolio. He's like, hey. He says, so then as Chip tells, he says, so we're walking, and we're like walking, and now we're like veering away from the registers. He says, so we're like, and we got armfuls of stuff. Coolio's got armfuls of stuff. He says, and then we're veering away. He said, then we just walk out of the store. And we're like, did he forget to pay for that? And I said to him, they said, did you forget to pay? He says, nah. Price of being famous.
That's great. That's great.
So I said, you got sneakers from TJ Maxx from Coolio. They said, well, that more technically from him.
That's a great story. All right, we're going to do this again. Richard.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure, gentlemen. This has been a great, again, like Matt said, everything in its time. I truly believe that. Everything in its time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt, too. Joe,
cool.
Thank you. This worked out really good, kind of last minute. Good group. A lot of fun.
Yeah, great story to end this podcast on.
Yeah,
Coolio.
great story.
Yeah, I got more stories for the next time. Yeah, Joe's sad that I didn't tell the disappearing dress one. Did I tell you the disappearing dress one?
Episode 2.
Oh, that's right. You were with me.
Episode 2.
That's right. He was actually with me.
You're going to have to come back. I don't know where the tape is. You're going to come back and tell me that one for sure. Yeah. Richard, thank you for coming. Matt, thanks for the intro.
Pleasure, yeah.
All right, guys. Great.
Comment, like, share, and subscribe.